So this is how the outline for the session looks today. I'm quickly going to take you through the project EduAccess, how it works. I'm then going to introduce you to panelists who will take you through the overview of this council studentship, discuss its eligibility, application processes, timeline, selection process, general tips, resources, and a word on AHRC DTPs. And then finally, we move to the question and answer session. So quickly about Project EduAccess, it's a nonprofit initiative which basically focuses on access to higher education, leadership, and professional opportunities. Realizing that it's a privilege most people for marginalized communities are systematically denied through cost, information, and dispositional barriers. Therefore, this initiative intervenes here and is a modest attempt to improve inclusivity in these spaces by removing some of these barriers for marginalized communities in the global south. We aim to improve the participation and representation of individuals from marginalized communities in higher education and create avenues for their personal, professional, and leadership development. We do this by adopting four key interventions, evidence to be effective in achieving these aims, which are through mentoring, counseling, remodeling, by providing information, advice, and guidance, by capacity building and skill development, and finally, evidence-based advocacy. With that, I introduce you to your panelist. We are very delighted to have Vrinda Sharma with us, who's agreed to do this session for us. She is pursuing PhD in STEM biology from University of Manchester. The stage is all yours. Vrinda, please go ahead.
Hello, everyone. I'm Vrinda, and I'm doing my PhD in stem cell biology under the MRC-DTP scheme. MRC-DTP is one of the UKRI initiatives, so I would just take you over what it's all about. Um, so, um, UKRI is basically a public body that is sponsored by the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy. And it plays a very critical role in funding and supporting research areas across the UK. So one of its key initiatives is to offer studentships to doctoral students like us, right? And these studentships cover not just the tuition fees, but will also provide you with a stipend for the entire duration of your PhD. But along with this, it also includes access to training and developmental opportunities, which are basically tailored to enhance your research and career perspectives. Now, it's important to know that you don't apply directly to UKRI for these studentships. So you apply to research organizations. For example, University of Manchester would be a research organization. So even though I'm an MRC-DTP student, I didn't apply for UKRI, I applied to University of Manchester. Because UKRI typically gives money to universities, and then universities have the right to kind of admit students. So it works that way. And lastly, these studentships by UKRI are open to all prospective doctoral students, including international students. So all non-UK students, including the European students, are now recognized as international students. However, there is a 30% limit on these international studentships. So this is something to keep in mind if you're an overseas applicant. And now we can move on to the next slide. UKRI, there are a diverse set of funding opportunities that are provided by UKRI by 7 of its research councils, Innovate UK, and Research England. So all 9 of these bodies collectively support a wide range of disciplines, from medical and biological research to humanities, etc. All of the medical and biological research comes under the Medical Research Council, or MRC. And next slide, please. So this Medical Research Council is one of the research councils under UKRI, and it has a mission to support world-class research, which is aimed at improving human health. So this could be a wide range of things, from basic biomedicine to population health and translational science. But all in all, all of the projects should be tackling societal and global health challenges. So just to take you over some stats, MRCDTP has an annual budget of about £800 million and has been supporting thousands of research across the UK. And it typically takes about 3.5 to 4 years to complete a PhD if you're a full-time student, or if you're a part-time student, equivalent of that. And under the scheme, there are internship and placement opportunities also available, but I will take you over all of them later. Next slide, please. So what does it cover? Under this MRCDTP scheme, there is a comprehensive financial and academic support that's provided to you. So the entire tuition fees, whether you're a home student or you're an international student with fees of about 27 to 28,000 pounds per annum, all of it would be covered under MRCDTP if you get selected. Along with this, you also get a tax-free maintenance stipend, which is about £19,000 per annum currently. But if you're in London, you get extra £2,000 per annum. But also if you are under the iCase program, which I will explain later, but it's having a collaboration with an industrial partner. If that's the case, then you get additional £2,500 on top per annum. But this is basic that every student gets, but then there are also opportunities for you to apply for additional research training funds, which can cover about £5,000 worth of training for PhD students. And there are more things that sometimes they allow you to do international placements, so they are able to fund you more, or they can give you 6 months of post-PhD training period as well, which I will all take you over all of that later. Next, please. So DTPs are basically providing comprehensive funding for doctoral training programs, and they are designed to offer flexibility for the research organizations. So like I said before, they would be funding research organizations like University of Manchester, and then these organizations have limited fund to fund a specific number of students, which could vary across organizations. So this allows the research organizations to take in doctoral students, aligning that with their strategies and their strengths. Secondly, it allows people to have professional development because there are a wide range of training opportunities that are available. So students not only gain research experience throughout their PhD, but they also develop skills that would eventually help them in their career. So for prospective students, it's important that MRC is not directly recruiting these DTPs. They are, you have to apply to the university in order to get admitted to these programs. Now, to talk to you about the iCase programs that I mentioned before, these are studentships that come under MRC as a whole, but they are not just in academia. You are collaborating with an industrial partner, and the project needs to be such that industrial motive also needs to be there. So something that's more maybe translational research that could be collaborated with any company, let's say AstraZeneca. So AstraZeneca would be funding you up to 2,500, minimum of £2,500 per annum. And then you also get this sometimes training opportunities within industry. So you do these placements as a part of your PhD. So while continuing your project, you would just go to the industry and maybe collect some patient samples or try out different drugs over there, testing different drug compounds, etc. All of this could be a part of industrial aspect of it. Next slide, please. So MRC DTPs, there are a lot of universities that are currently collaborating with UKRI, and UKRI is funding all of these universities. But I would take you over one example, which is University of Manchester, and another King's College London, because I'm familiar with these universities because I've had training opportunities in both of these universities. So, but if you want more information regarding any of these universities, you can follow this link and you can have a better idea, because as you can see, all of them are offering different numbers of studentships. Now, this depends on how much funding the university is getting from UKRI. So you can have all of that information available over here in this link. But next slide, please. So as an example of an MRC-DTP program, this is for University of Manchester. Currently, there are about 30 postgrads which are admitted every year under the scheme. And all projects need to be interdisciplinary, meaning that supervisors have to come together from different departments and then collaborate to come up with a project. So, for example, you could have a project that has in my case, like a stem cell biologist and collaborating with a molecular biologist who are combining their projects or with someone who's a computational biologist. So my project essentially would be catering to all three aspects of these different departments. And so this is like a core necessity of being a part of MRC-DTP project, that it has to collaborate different departments if it needs to be on the scheme. So to give you examples of extra funding opportunities under this university, we have something called the Flexible Training Support Award, which is separate from the basic stipend that you get. So under this, you can get training opportunities and grant support that's available throughout your PhD. So starting from your first year until you submit your thesis, you can apply for these grants, and they are available several times in a year. And so you can do any training in any part of the world under the scheme. Then there is Innovation and Translational Springboard, which allows you, if you have a startup idea in your mind. So maybe they will actually help you to let you work on that startup and fund you for that. So a lot of people actually try and apply for this because it's something that everyone's looking forward to do these days. Then last is the Pathways to Impact scheme, which is something that you can apply during your final year of PhD. So a lot of times it happens that you're doing a PhD, but throughout your 4 years, you don't get a clear idea of exactly what you want to do after your PhD, like immediately after. So it allows you to get funding for 6 months after your PhD. And for those 6 months, whether you want a career in academia and want to work as a postdoc, or whether you want to switch to industries, you can have that funding for 6 months and explore different opportunities that are available to you. So I think it's brilliant that they kind of do that, and all of it is available if you are an MRC-DTP student. Next slide, please. Now to talk about eligibility, what all things do you need in order to apply for this scheme? So firstly, of course, there needs to be academic qualifications. So as a minimum, you need to have a very strong undergrad degree with 2-1 typically, or above that, so like a first class in a relevant discipline. Only then would you be eligible. But because the competition is so fierce, most of the applicants will be having a master's level qualification. And then you need a research proposal. Now, this is optional because there can be two parts to applying for an MRC-DTP. It could either be supervisor-led, meaning that the supervisor is the one who's going to be applying for a research project. So they'll be giving research proposal first, and then you apply for that project. So the project's already has a research proposal, whereas they can be a student-led scheme in which the student collaborates with the supervisor, but writes his own research proposal and then applies to the program. So if you go to every university's page, you'll be able to find whether the university also supports student-led schemes or not. But in the case of most of the universities that I know, they do support student-led projects. Then we come to skills and competencies. So in your application and during the entire interview process, they're trying to assess whether you have strong critical thinking or not, whether you have good academic writing skills or not, whether you're able to demonstrate that you've had previous independent research experience. Do you have the sort of interdisciplinary interest that they require? So all of these things they try to assess in all stages of the application process. Then one question that's often asked is the language proficiency. So if you are somebody whose first language is not English, then they require you to provide a proof of English, which could be either IELTS or TOEFL. And there's always a minimum score that you need to achieve, which can vary across universities. But if you believe that you have English as your first language, and if you've done your previous degrees in English, then you can always mail the department to clarify whether they need you to take these tests. In most cases, a letter from your previous university stating that your academic training has been in English is enough for you to not provide these proofs. But it's always good to verify from the departments of that specific university first. Then, as I've mentioned before, it's open to all students, irrespective of which country you belong to. But yeah, do note that there are 30% reserved within each PTP. And because every university has different number of students that they take, this means that they would be taking different number of international students. Next slide, please. Then, so how do we identify the appropriate project? So you either choose a university first and see that, oh, I like this university and I like these professors. Let me see if there are projects available. Or you can go for advertised projects that are going to be on findaphd.com kind of sites, and you'll be able to look at all of those projects over there. Then it's very, very important to speak to the supervisor first. So discuss your experience and discuss the research proposal with them before applying for any project, because this way you'd be able to see whether you would be able to gel well in their lab and vice versa. And next important thing is to submit the application. So what all things are required in that? Research proposal, optional if it's a student-led pathway. Personal statement forms a very, very important part of your application process. And this would outline your passion for research, how your background is aligning with the project that you're applying for. Why are you motivated to pursue a PhD? And so this would be your opportunity to convey your enthusiasm and your commitment to do this project. Then you do require academic transcripts. So whatever you're stating is your percentage in the previous degrees, you have to provide proof for that. So you have to send in your transcripts. And typically universities would ask references, which would be 2, but in some cases, they can be up to 3 references as well. Then lastly, every PhD studentship is going to have an interview process, which usually involves presenting your research interests and discussing goals with the panel. Next slide, please. Now, looking at the timeline, yes, it could vary per university, but to just give you an idea of a general outline, September to November would be the time when you would be identifying different programs and supervisors. You would be reaching out to your supervisors and preparing your application material, maybe trying to schedule meetings with your supervisor or their lab members so that you can get a better idea of how the lab environment is. Then you would be writing your personal statement, approaching professors in your universities, requesting for letters of recommendation from them. Then November to December would be the time that once you've identified your DTP program and your supervisor, this would be the time when you'll have all of your deadlines and you'll be submitting to universities. Then around December to January, you start universities start to shortlist the applicants, and soon after they give interview calls to students. And January is the time usually when all of the interviews take place for all of the shortlisted candidates, and offers are typically made soon after to all the candidates as well. Next slide, please. Now, when we think about the selection process, what are the criteria that the universities use? They can vary slightly, but the essential scoring system remains the same across the universities. So over here, I've given you two examples of King's College London MRC-DTP program and University of Manchester MRC-DTP program. So in King's, we see that there are the entire application process happens in two stages. So the first stage is when you have an application form and you have to fill that. So in that application form, you'll have to fill in the top 3 projects that you would want to apply for. So King's is a university which gives out a list of projects that they can offer to students in that cohort. And then you select any 3, at least 1, maximum 3 projects. And then there are some questions and answers that you're supposed to answer over there. So that could include anything from tell us about your research background to why do you want to apply for this project. Tell us about a time where you had something challenging in your research and how did you tackle that, etc. type of questions that you have to answer. And based on this, they shortlist candidates and they then have their stage 2, which is the interview stage. So in King's, the interview stage typically involves having like a 10 minutes long interview of all the candidates on like 1 or 2 days. And then they ask you to submit final checks. So all of your academic qualifications, English language requirements, fee status, whether you are international or UK, you have to fill in that. All of that would be done in stage 2. And once all of that is done, scoring is done from a scale of 1 to 5 based on 4 criteria. What professional and academic journey you've had, what experience the candidate has from like previous degrees, what kind of aptitude the candidate shows, what proposal the particular project has. So that also plays a role over here. Then how effectively are you able to communicate your knowledge? All of that, they kind of score you from a range of 1 to 5, and based on that, they give out offers. But this is a little bit different from University of Manchester, where there would be an interview, which will be just with your supervisor or supervisors. And then if you're selected, then the supervisor nominates you to the admission committee. And then you make your application to the admission portal. And the shortlisting of those candidates for the interview process is based on the nominations as well as the application that you submit. So let's imagine that there are 2 candidates. One of them has made an application straight to the portal, but has not contacted the supervisor, does not have a nomination from them. But there's another student who has made an application, but also has a nomination. So the admission committee will score the other candidate more, right? So that's why it's very, very important to get in touch with supervisors. Then once you are shortlisted for an interview, this will be not with your supervisors. This would be by an independent committee that might not be related to your field directly. So for a cancer project, you can have a committee that has neurocardiovascular scientists. But the scoring is similar across MRC-DTP. So this is like just a little bit contrasting in the 2 universities, but essentially the selection scoring system remains the same. Next slide, please. So some tips that I would want to give you if you're applying this year. Firstly, start early. So start researching your programs and supervisors well in advance. Identify what all supervisors have researches that are aligning with the kind of work you want to do. And as I said, reach out to them, try to schedule meetings with them, and if they like your CV, always like attach your CVs in the emails, and this way you can kind of get like a thank you. This way you can get that nomination that you probably deserve. Then next is your personal statement, and it's a very, very important part of your application project. So make sure that you're highlighting a lot of things in that. So you are highlighting your research experiences, you're highlighting why you're motivated for that, what all achievements you've had so far, what are your future career plans. So typically write your short-term plans and your long-term career plans and support that information by any relevant trainings or skills that you've acquired over the last few years. And if you have any publications, do try to mention that as well. And usually personal statements are anywhere between 500 to 1,000 words. So it's not like a long essay, but it needs to cover all of these points. Then letters of recommendation, I would advise you to reach out to people who are familiar with you so that they're able to talk about you, and don't write like a general letter of recommendation for you. And typically there are only 2 or maybe maximum of 3 references that are required, and they can be anyone who's been your academic supervisor on your undergrad project, or a lecturer who has known you for 3 years, or someone, maybe if you've had some work experience, maybe your manager can also give you like a professional, can be your professional referee. And but make sure that you also tell them a little bit about the programs that you're applying for so that they're able to tailor that letter accordingly, so that they're able to highlight your strengths accordingly. Then when you're appearing for interview, make sure that you stay calm during the entire interview process, because mostly this wouldn't be for more than 10 to 20 minutes. And in majority of the cases, they would want you to speak about your research experiences. And nobody knows your research better than you do. So try to stay calm in that. So it could, the structure of the interviews could be maybe 2 or 3 types. Typically, it's like a 10 minutes presentation on your research background. And then based on that, there is a Q&A. And those questions could include questions about what you just spoke about, so your research, so follow-up questions on that. Or it could be something more general, which is something like, why are you applying for this project? What all hurdles do you think you can have in this project? Questions like these. And then it could also be a critical review of a research paper. So this is something that King's does a lot. So you have to give like a 5 to 10 minutes presentation on a research paper, which is given to you in advance, and you have to critically review it. And following this, there is a discussion amongst the panel members with you. On different aspects of the research paper, as well as different aspects about the research that you want to do. So yeah, next slide, please. These are some of the resources that you can look at. So as I mentioned, find a PhD to look at the different projects that are currently advertised, and the UKRI website to see all of the different universities that are covered under the UKRI, under the MRC DTP. Next slide. So yes, if you have any questions, please feel free to either ask them on chat or come on mic and ask me.
Yes, thank you so much, Vrinda. I hope this has been helpful, and now we welcome the participants to ask any questions, any clarification that they require, or any doubts, if you have. You can either raise your hand and then ask your questions directly, or you can put them in the chat box here. So do we have any questions? Before we can warm up to the Q&A, which is, sometimes people do need time to gather their thoughts together. I was curious because I wanted to know that you mentioned that there's student-led pathways also and otherwise as
Yeah.
well. I basically wanted to know your journey. Like, was it a student-led pathway? And I was curious to know that what are the basically key elements for evaluation that one should focus on? And what was in your mind, like what were you focusing on? I do know that you mentioned research proposal, then there's a statement of a personal statement, but how does one make research proposal stand out, and what are the other key elements that you know are important for evaluation?
So to answer your first question, I'll talk you through my journey of getting this project. So I found this project on findaphd.com, and I had been working for about 3 years in research. And so I kind of had an idea about the kind of project that I would be interested in. So it was simpler for me to immediately like this project because it was exactly what I had been looking for. And so I reached out to the supervisors who went through my CV and encouraged me to apply. So I had a brief meeting with them before applying for that project on through findaphd.com. And in the preliminary meeting, I liked the idea of the project. It wasn't in too much of details because it also involves a lot of patents. So they couldn't give away too much, but I liked the idea of it. So I applied. They shortlisted me. They were the ones shortlisting. And they interviewed me now in details to know more about the work that I've been doing so far. And in that, they, out of all of the applicants, they liked me and they nominated me to the university. So now what happens is that once they nominate me, it's out of their hands who the committee is going to accept, because it's always possible that the committee might not select anyone for their lab. So once that was done, I made an application to the university portal this time. And as part of that application process, I was also supposed to submit an essay, which was, of course, not completely unrelated. It was related to the kind of project that I was applying for. And it was like a 3-page essay that I had to write, along with I had to submit like a personal statement, which I think is the key here. Like, they would look at your essay because they want to assess your academic writing skills, but they especially want to look at your personal statement because in 500 words, you have to convince them that you are the right candidate for this. So for me, it wasn't too difficult because this was exactly the project that I was applying for or looking for my PhD. So this wasn't too difficult for me. But yeah, I think this is a key aspect of the entire application process. Plus, having a nomination from them helped me get shortlisted. Then I had my interview, which was for 10 minutes. And I would really like suggest all candidates to make sure that you don't make long presentations. If they give you a time limit, you be disciplined and you stick to it. And that's very important, that yeah, you might have like 100 slides to show, but you have to have that ability to explain your research to somebody within a short number of slides. So you do that, and then they ask you a couple of questions about your research project, some doubts they might have, because of course they are not of this field. There are some people who are in academia but not related to this field. And then they ask you some general questions about how would you evaluate your PhD success, and things like that, some general questions. And based on that, they score you. And because there are limited international studentships, it is competitive, but if you do good in all of these stages, you get selected. Yeah. Yeah, so I think regarding your second question, what's the most important thing? I would say your personal statement is super, super important. Of course, having the background, like the necessary background and skills, is also important when they are trying to select between two worthy candidates. So that's super important.
Thank you for taking that question. We do have a question in the chat box, and I think it's from Samreen, and we'll take the question. Thank you for the question. So she says, I have done a couple of internships and applied for 2 PhD programs through Find a PhD portal. However, I did not get it. I do not have any research papers. May I know what do they look for in a prospective student? Also, do I have to secure admission in PhD program first and then apply to for the MRC?
Okay, so I will start with firstly saying that having internships already at this stage and having that good research experience is really good, and you're doing well. But I would suggest apply for more programs, because getting an offer, getting shortlisted for PhD, it's not easy. So if you apply for more number of places, then your probability of getting selected increases. And like I mentioned before, reaching out to people is very important, because if you do that, you're kind of making sure that you're not applying to a project. Maybe it's possible that the supervisor already has somebody in their mind. So even if you're a worthy candidate, they wouldn't be interested in you. So it's always good to reach out to them, and you can just write a polite email asking them that, oh, I saw your PhD project on findaphd.com, and I have had so and so experience, and you can attach your CV in the email and ask them if it would be okay for us to have a short meeting to discuss more on the project, because I'm highly interested. Or they could just say that, I'm a bit busy, but please feel free to apply. And just their reply like that kind of conveys to you that they are interested in having you as a prospective applicant. So I would suggest reaching out to supervisors. It's super important, that a lot of people don't do. And it's okay to not have research papers. And I would say that if you have research papers, that's exceptional, because typically you would take like a 4-year PhD project to publish papers. So it's okay to not have research papers, but at the same time, it's vital to have research experience. So you cannot go without skills to into a PhD, but you can go without any papers, and that's absolutely fine. Um, what do they look in prospective students? So they can have prospective students who are coming straight from undergrad, or they could have someone who's done their master's and has had 2 or 3 years of research experience in academia or industry. So they can be very kind of students. But what they want to look at is the potential of the student. So within this short time, how much has a student been able to achieve? How has a student done in their application process? Were they able to explain to us why they are the best candidate for the PhD position? And so all of these things, there are so many different things that matter when they are trying to make these shortlisting process. And I would really say that in the application process, there is always like a Q&A. Sometimes you just have a personal statement, but a lot of times they have these questions and answers. And even though you're answering those questions really well, but if you're not being specific to exactly what they're answering, they would not be able to score you properly. So make sure that you can have a really nice life story, but you are not just answering that for the sake of making a good answer. You're answering exactly the kind of question that they're asking, and because it's just like a 1 to 5 scoring system that they can do. So make sure that the Q&A part of it goes well. And regarding the last question that you had, whether you have to secure an admission to a PhD program, so the project that you're applying for is directly under MRC-DTP. So you are getting the funding because it's being funded by MRC-DTP. So you just apply for that project. And like it'll be listed under the MRC-DTP scheme in the university portal. So you would just be applying for that one project, and you don't have to make any separate application under UKRI separately. Because if you get this project, then you will automatically be entitled to everything that the MRC-DTP has to offer. I hope that's clear.
Yeah, I think that clarifies the issue. I think the idea is with the Q&A part, especially to be as specific as one could in their write-ups, in the questions that I've asked, so that the scoring for the evaluators becomes easy. I do have another question which has been DM'd to me. So it asks, can the scope of a project evolve over time once it has been, I mean, once the student has been granted a studentship, or is it like locked and there's no scope for evolution of the project?
So this is research, right? So it's always possible that you go with an idea, but 2 years down the line, you, through your research, realize that there's something else that could be done with the work you're doing. And it happens more often than not that projects evolve, because you're evolving your vision as you're doing research. So, and it's actually super important for you as students and for your supervisors to be very flexible in that approach, because you cannot be fixated to an idea, because it's possible that the knowledge that you have could be, next day some research comes up that kind of nullifies it, or kind of says that there is something better that you can do. So they evolve all the time. So yeah, you need to be very flexible when you're doing research. Okay.
Right. There's another question. I've taken gap years, I mean two it says, for different reasons. Will I be asked questions about it? Should I mention it in my personal statement? So it's the gap year question.
So kind of like depends on exactly what you were doing in the gap year as well. If this was something, let's say, COVID related, which is something I did as well, because I was a COVID graduate and there was lockdown, so I couldn't get out of my house, let alone join a PhD program in another country. So I had to take a gap year, and I didn't mention it in my personal statement because I didn't really think it's worth it. I had research experience, so much of things to mention. But a lot, if it's worrying you a lot, then a lot of times in the application process, there is a specific section allotted to that. So you don't need to mention it in your personal statement really, but there is a section for it where they ask you if you have had any special circumstances that you would like us to consider. So that's something you can mention over there. But if I were you, I wouldn't really mention it in my personal statement unless you feel that you did something that's worth mentioning. So whether you gain some sort of, even if it's not research, but some sort of perspective that you think is vital to you doing research. And so in that case, I think it's worth mentioning. Otherwise, if you feel like it's a problem for the committee, then just mention it separately, not in your personal statement. I don't know. What do you think, Sana, in this?
Yeah, I mean, if the gap year, sometimes, what happens is that the gap year is too much, like 5 years sometimes. So it's expected in social science that we give an explanation that maybe we taken a job or there were some extenuating circumstances. Plus, we always have the option to put extenuating circumstances in the application. But otherwise, if you have enough skills, if you're equipped, I think I would largely agree with Brinda. You just go heads on. It's fine. So yeah, do we have any further questions? We are actually running on time, so it should be okay. If we don't have any further questions, then we can call this session a close. I hope this was helpful for all of you. I thank Vrinda for joining us today. Thank you so much for being with us this early morning. And to the participants who joined, I hope this was beneficial to you. I've just put some concluding ritualistic statements in the chat box. So if you want to know more about writing your application documents, have a look at the guides that we have prepared and developed on our website, which is projecteduaccess.com. The recording of this session will be available on YouTube channel. We've also conducted various sessions on university and scholarship applications, so you can watch the recordings there. I've put the links in the chat box, so you can always have a look. So with that, we come to the close of the session. Thank you so much for joining, and we look forward to work with you in future, Brinda. Thank you so much. And there'll be definitely more sessions of this kind for you all to participate in. Yeah, thank you so much. Take care.
Thanks a lot,
Bye. Have a
Sana.
great weekend.
Bye.